Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another cozy magical reading update. What's up? Alright. Hope you're comfortable, because this might get a little bit long now. Also, never mind that I'm not wearing pants. This doesn't concern you. This is my house, my couch. There's no legal requirement for pants. Yet. I'm here to talk about books, not to look good. So after we talked about a bunch of greasy, grimy, filthy shit last time in part 1, the one that you might have seen in your subscription box or decided not to watch, very understandably so if that's the case, we left those behind, we expelled those from the rest of the group, so now we're here gathered together to talk about my other reads, which are less diversive or whatever. There's some gruesome, spooky, maybe even some vulgar, disgusting stuff in the books that I'm gonna be talking about now as well, but not to the extent of the 2 books from the previous video for this month. This is gonna be much more subdued, less risque, less problematic. So relax and enjoy the random, spontaneous jibber jabber from this here magical. 1, 2, 3 books to talk about, with one potentially coming later, because that's the one I'm reading right now, and I might be finishing it before the month ends. For now, 3 books. Let's start with the shortest one. The only one that I got physically to grab and show, and the one that's probably, this is the most exotic, for lack of a better term, format, because this is not a novel, this is a manga. There's a good chance I don't even need to introduce this, because this is Junji Ito's Uzumaki, Volume 1. Now, Junji Ito is super popular when it comes to horror, writing and art. There's a very good chance, even if you don't recognize the name, that you have seen some arts from his floating around the internet. They get memed a bunch, but they are also just like popular shit to like share online. And if you have come across some Junji Ito images randomly without ever knowing what that is, there is even a good chance, to go even further with this, that some of those images are from this specific piece of work from him. Uzumaki must be one of Junji Ito's biggest or most popular or most well-known works, and I have read some Junji Ito short stories, a few individual ones, way back in the day, so this isn't my first Junji Ito, but this is the first more long-form manga by Junji Ito that I've read, or at least it's the first volume out of 3 from a long-form manga by him. I already had an introduction with him through the short stories that I've read in the past. So going into Uzumaki, one of his more prominent and longer and like more thorough, presumably, works was actually exciting to me, and I had that on my to-do list for a long time, so it was nice to like be able to grab this from the library and just like get into this. I probably would have already read at least volume 2, maybe even both 2 and 3, but for some reason I'm unlucky enough that volume 2 and 3 are actually checked out at the library right now by somebody else. According to the website, they are expected to be back at the library the same day I have to put this back at the library. That's just weird timing. Somebody got volume 2 and 3 the same time I got volume 1, I guess. This is about basically the story of a bunch of teenagers, mainly 2 teenagers, living in a small town, in a rural town in Japan somewhere, where the inhabitants seem to become stranger and stranger. Something is up, something mysterious, something probably paranormal is up. People just start to behave strangely, and there's a common thread throughout it all. An obsession of spiral, the subtitle of spiral into horror. I get not really necessary but appropriate. Junji Ito is pretty well known for being big into spirals, into like the visual of the spiral and like all sorts of like meanings of the spiral. There's even like the sort of like afterword where Junji Ito himself like tells you about his own like obsession with spirals and why he chose to write like whole stories, whole books about spooky spirals. And it's like you might be thinking something like, what the fuck is there to get out of the simple visual of a spiral to fill like 3 volume of horror manga? But like, if Junji Ito is one thing, it is that he's incredibly creative with spooky, creepy visuals. Lots of body horror, lots of like really effective, just unnerving, creepy visuals, and he manages to bring up the form of the spiral in lots of creepy ways. Junji Ito's art is fucking gorgeous. Even the first 2 pages, before anything spooky even happens, this is just really nice. Like, I don't read a lot of mangas or even Western comics or like graphic novels or that sort of stuff. I have the occasional one here and there, but I don't really read much of that in general. But I still have to say that this, like Junji Ito's work, this especially one of the visually most impressive ones I've read. Like, his drawings are amazing. Not just the spooky stuff that is super strong and memorable as well, but even just the basics, like the presentation of the locations and the character designs. It's like really beautiful shit. The writing, this is like a sort of episodic thing, like as a lot of mangas are. Like the different chapters have an episodic quality to them. There is an overlapping through line with this one town where people start to act strange, but each chapter usually is its own like weird incident for the most part, at least in volume 1. And because of that, obviously there's like stronger and less strong stories in here, though none of them are terrible, and the good ones are generally awesome. I had a blast going through this, which made me wish I actually had just gotten all 3 volumes at once, so I could just read them back to back. Now I have to wait for that one other person that for some reason, or like maybe it's 2 people. Okay, no, that maybe it's 2 people that got volume 2 and 3 individually, respectively, but both of them are logged on the website to be returned on the same day that I'm scheduled to return this one. What is up with this? Whatever. I'm looking forward to getting volume 2 and 3 once they are available next month, probably. I'm not gonna let much time pass. If you are into horror stories, if you are into visual art, or if you are, of course, into manga, I think Junji Ito is kind of an essential. I feel like you should give his stuff a try if you are into one of these things. Next one. What's chronologically the next book? Oh yeah, Ubik. We're back with the Dick. I've talked about Philip K. Dick a bunch on this channel before. Like, started with Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, went to a short story collection of his. I then even talked about Valis recently and his weird pro-life short story, The Pre-Persons. So we got Philip K. Dick 4 times already in my reading updates. And here's the 5th time with Ubik by Philip K. Dick. Like most of my Philip K. Dick reads, this was a buddy read again with my good friend Uwe. We read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and the short story collection together as well. Here's the 3rd Philip K. Dick book we read together now. We just like to bond over Dick. So Ubik, not a Philip K. Dick book I had on my radar before Uwe recommended it, though it did have an interesting synopsis. I'm gonna read the synopsis that is used on the story graph, because I think that's the one that made me interested as well. Glenn Runsiter is dead. Or is he? Someone died in the explosion orchestrated by his business rivals, but even as his funeral is scheduled, his mourning employees are receiving bewildering messages from their boss, and the world around them is warping and regressing in ways which suggest that their own time is running out, if it hasn't already. So Ubik plays with death, a potential life after death, or like an afterlife situation. That's like at the core of this thing.
That's like at the core of this thing. That's like at the
As pretty much always, Philip K. Dick's Future World brings up some very interesting ideas, some interesting concepts, ripe for exploration of the like philosophical and psychological kinds. There's, as always, there are really cool, fun, interesting ideas in this to paint this future world, including but not limited to the absolute capitalist nightmare of having to feed actual change, actual coins into your apartment door to be allowed to leave or enter, which fills me with a kind of Kafkaesque dread that I haven't felt in a long time. That whole concept freaks me out. Imagine you're in your apartment and your door demands like 25 cents in cash so you can leave your apartment. And if you do not have this coin in your apartment, you're just trapped. You don't even have any choice to go out and earn it, or like go to the bank and like get it or whatever. No, you're trapped in your apartment. You got no change. You ain't getting through this door. This is not the crux of the story or whatever. This is just like a tidbit that happened and that stuck with me. And obviously this is like an intentionally exaggerated, jokey parody of like capitalist future. But anyway, the core of the thing, it introduces this concept of an like technological afterlife where people can suspend their deceased friends and family so they can still communicate with them even after death for a while. And apparently those suspended deceased people, which are like frozen in the machine, they have their sort of own existence. And the whole book kind of like balances on that, is like built on that concept. This isn't really a book where you can talk about the plot without spoiling anything, because this book I don't want to say it's like based on twists and surprises, but it is a bit of like a bag full of surprises in that a main element of the book, of the story, is that the reader as well as the characters to a degree are like left in the dark in terms of a bunch of core aspects which are revealed the further it goes on. It's a colorful bag of surprises, and it does that entertainingly. And again, a lot of these concepts are ripe for further exploration, but that is actually kind of the problem, if I want to call it that I had with this book. It was entertaining, I was engaged, I enjoyed this book, but it constantly made me wish the book would go one step further with its ideas. For example, this isn't really a spoiler because this happens extremely early on. In this world there's also like people that are psychically gifted, and very early on there's a character that's introduced with really complex and powerful time manipulation abilities. It was one of those like introductions of like a character where I thought, okay, that's ambitious. How is Philip K. Dick gonna use this without like writing himself into like a dead end or like losing control and having this potentially all-powerful character not like take over the entire story and its stakes? But then again, that ability, which is so thoroughly introduced in a way that it would like build up anticipation as well and like expectations, and the story starts to go into a completely different direction that for a long time completely forgets about that thing for the most part. That was something like that where I was expecting, hoping, anticipating that it would go a step further with that concept that is so interesting and so colorful and so like full of potential, but it then doesn't really capitalize on it, but instead moves on to something else that is also entertaining and interesting, but also doesn't explore as thoroughly as I would hope to. I liked the book, but I wish it would have been longer to really dig deeper into the interesting concepts. Out of all the Philip K. Dick texts that I've read so far, next to the short story collection, this is probably gonna be the least memorable one for me, which I'm not regretting having read that. It was a fine experience. I just don't think it's gonna have a lasting impact on me. But yeah, that was Ubik. I'm pretty sure Uwe liked it a bit more than I did. Let's see when Uwe and I will read the next Philip K. Dick book, which is inevitably gonna happen someday, I bet. The third book, which I just finished yesterday, and I am very happy to report on it. Earlier this year, I read Fluids by Leitz. Leitz being a content creator in her own regard that I have mentioned a bunch of times on my channel before. Someone who I watched on YouTube for years now. Fluids was her first book. I liked it quite a lot. Really played into her own interests, taking inspiration from like shock and gore media online and like always online personalities and like trauma subjects. It was a good read, a gnarly, nasty good read. And this year, just a couple months ago, Leitz dropped her second novel, Girl Flash, an extreme horror story about love by Leitz. Before I talk about Girl Flash, I want to mention something about the fucking Amazon Kindle app. My library, I got like Girl Flash, I got some samples of books that I've talked about, like including Necrophiliac, and no one is talking about this, and like the Aggression in Pornography science paper. And then in the fucking recommendations, I get all these like sexy middle-aged housewife books. What the fuck? I get that this like Amazon is probably thinks that I really like to read like the naughty sexual shit with like having like girl flesh, necrophiliac, and like aggression and pornography up here, but like that is like a weird stretch, especially considering that one of these texts is a scientific paper about problematic sides of the pornography industry. One is about the vile act of necrophilia, and one is like a horror novel, and then it takes like, oh, you like erotic romance? Whatever. Girl Flesh by Leitz. I was actually looking forward to this book. Like after reading Fluids, Leitz announced her second book being published later this year. It will be called Girl Flesh. It will be even more personal to her. And I'm really curious where her writing is gonna go from Fluids onwards. Fluids was more of like a straight horror, not well, it wasn't straight. Oh my god, I would never call a Leitz book straight. We are gay as fuck in this shit, but Fluids was more like an immediate disgusting like horror story, like also inspired by like filthy B-movie horror things, you know, like because that is like the realm that Leitz inhabits, if you know what I mean. But Girl Flesh, on the other hand, still a horror story at its core. There are even some parallels between Fluids and Girl Flesh. There are very clear reflections of Leitz's own personality, her life, her background, very clear elements from that like are incorporated into the story. I think this book is in parts very much a work of self-reflection, because the two main characters are sort of two sides of Leitz herself, because they are an online personality, like an internet micro-celebrity with a following who is writing about stuff, and the other person is a musician, which Leitz is kinda known online for both those things. Very much think that these two characters are in parts a reflection of herself, of the writer, and they incorporate probably a lot of her personality as well. There's like trauma as a subject, and like troubled upbringing in a problematic childhood home and stuff. And I cannot confirm this, but I'm almost certain that some of those things are very much inspired by some personal real life experiences of Leitz. There's this one vlog, this one pre-release vlog that Leitz made, where she genuinely literally says that Girl Flesh is gonna be much more personal, and it really feels like that.
I wrote 3 or 4 chapters just kind of on a whim, completely selfishly, because I was like, well, no one's gonna read this anyway. It's way too personal, and it had things that were going on in my personal life in there, and I was just like, spooky. Actually, that would be the thing that I would finish. Amazing. So that ended up being the thing that I finished. Amazing. Although many alterations have been made along the way to make sure that it doesn't resemble any personal life bullshit whatsoever. It definitely started with the seed of that.
You can really tell if you are somewhat familiar with the author already through the work that she's doing on YouTube, or like the music that she's writing, that she's making. That's not really the point. The story itself is about these two women bonding in times of struggle. There is violence, there's gore, there's some disgusting things. This writer in the story obviously wrote a lot of stories, horror stories about women, and there's a bit of reflection in that too, in the character having surrounded herself a lot with media about women being the victims of bad things, both like fictional as well as like true crime and gore media online. The character is very much aware of that stuff and very much made it part of their life, of her life. And there is one of the themes in this book is that now she is experiencing this sort of shit for herself in real life instead of like taking it in through media, which is always an interesting perspective, I think. And even that is something that I'm sure male Leitz on YouTube especially, a lot of her content is about fringe subjects, about like deep dives on like true crime stuff, gore media, or like awful horror movies and shit like that. That is like the sort of stuff that she's interested in. This character, the whole like sense of this character in this book, reflecting on all of that, very much so seems like something that MacLeod has thought about herself, being someone who has spent a lot of time with this sort of subject, this sort of media, and what that actually means, what that actually makes of a person. There's some interesting commentary on that too. A lot of the time is spent on the road in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in Texas, the home state of MacLeod as well, another personal like point, and it makes for a good story. I was very engaged. I finished this pretty quickly. One night before actually sleeping, I read this for like 2 hours and didn't want to go to sleep because I was really into the story. Then like the day I actually finished the book, I read for like 3 hours throughout the day. Anytime I had some minutes, I picked up the book, like when I was at trade school or like on my daily commute or whatever. Then at home I went to finish it because I was genuinely very engaged and very interested where the story would go. Unlike Fluids, the characters are actually pretty damn likable. It is actually nice to have a romantic pairing with a sort of harmonious quality. Like there was genuinely romantic elements into this. The two main characters, the two women, there's a relationship there that builds, and this building of the relationship and those two bringing together their individual respective grievances and building them each other up, the one learning from the other's mistakes, that sort of thing is a big element of the story, and it works well. Honestly, I don't think this is a spoiler, and I'm gonna be very vague. Yeah, I'm gonna be super fucking vague here. Somewhere around the middle of the book, they come across a mother and her trans daughter, which the mother doesn't approve of. So that's a subject as well, the transphobia of a parent towards their own child, which is a very delicate subject, and it is something that I love to read about, that I don't see much in books, especially not in fiction. So it was actually really, really cool that it was just picked up into this, and it's not even the core of the story, it's just one thing that happens, but it's still not so brief that it doesn't leave an effect. It still has an effect. It takes up time, and it is a situation that lingers, and it's good. I really like that. I actually wouldn't have minded if that whole situation was extended even more and grounded even more into the overall story. But yeah, Girl Flash, that was good. I liked it. Another hit for MacLeod. And that was 3 more books that I read this month. So, either I'm gonna finish my current book, which I mean, I guess I could just show it right now. After reading a lot of fiction and a lot of heavy or like darker stuff, I decided it would probably best to read something that I could get more wholesome value out of. I decided to start a non-fiction book that also potentially could improve my own life. And so I started to read today How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy by Jenny Odell. So I'm not gonna be talking about this here now, because if I'm actually gonna finish this book still this month before I upload this video, which is a possibility, then you're gonna see me talk about this book in like 20 seconds. If that doesn't happen and it will take me till the next month to finish this book, then this is what you can expect. It's already like very clear from the first pages that this is an extremely anti-capitalist text and I'm very excited for that. I think reading about how to disengage with the toxic elements of capitalism is a good thing to do on my daily commute to and from trade school. I think that evens it out a bit. But yeah, that's what I'm reading right now, and that's what I'm gonna be talking next. Will it be in this video or will it be in the one next month? Who knows? You will find out. Either way, thanks for watching and keep reading. Bye bye.